Didn't you call it Spa then in the end, but Hostel II?
What's that?
Why didn't you call it Spa in the end, but Hostel II?
Well, I don't know if anyone would necessarily know a movie called Spa would be a sequel to Hostel, because it's Hostel. Actually, in America, it's part 2. So here they just called it Hostel 2. So
Okay.
it was actually Sony who called it Hostel 2. I was thinking about obviously I was thinking about what the guys were there for in the beginning, and the Hostel one is very much about people who aren't satisfied with anything they have, and who just will exploit other people and do anything just to, for their own purposes, just to get off. And, these guys, American girls aren't good enough. They want European girls. Then they're in the disco, and those girls aren't good enough. Then they want hookers. And then the hookers aren't enough. And then they go to Slovakia and meet the Eastern European girls, and they still have sex with them. And it's still not enough. They want to have sex with them again, so it's a better story for later. Their friend has already disappeared, and they could leave. No one has a gun to their head. They have sex with them more. It's like everybody wants, nothing satisfies anybody, and then they wind up in this place with people who are not satisfied by that, who now have to kill. Violence has become the substitute for sex. They have to kill to get off. So that was really very much a theme of the first one. So I thought, well, why would you couldn't have, if these girls are attractive and they're in Italy, they're not gonna have any trouble meeting men. But I did want to show the cultural differences between American girls and Italian men. And American girls that are in college, there are laws in place to protect them from sexual harassment. And guys, there's some campuses where you have to, like, if you want to hold hands, you have to sign a piece of paper that we mutually agree to have sex. There's crazy stuff, I can't even believe it. But people say, they have to ask permission for it. It's not like you can make a move and grab someone's hand. You have to say, can I hold your hand? Yes. And then it's like everything has been so defined legally in the United States that, like, so much of the romance has been taken out. But the girls in Italy, they're still kind of talking and flirting with Italian guys as if they're under that protection, and these Italian guys are aggressive. And these girls almost get into serious trouble, and they almost get raped. And one of the girls starts mouthing off their friends, like, you fucking crazy? This guy's like, it's not like we can go to report them. So this girl who tells him about Slovakia is like, actually, Slovakia, it's like, oh, I'm going to Slovakia. There's beautiful spas there. It's spas, it's relaxing. It's, fountain of youth. It will make you, it's so peaceful. It's so beautiful. It's great for your skin. It'll be incredible. And the girls are just like, you know what? Fuck it. We've had enough of these guys. Like, let's take a break. Like, let's just fucking take a break from these guys and go this place where no one's gonna, and then even one of the girls says, wasn't there a war there? And they're like, there hasn't been war there in 50 years. There's no war. It's like, she actually sells the idea of safe haven to these girls, which is what lures the girls to go there.
Have you ever had any feedback from Eastern Europeans on that?
Oh yeah. We had, the tourist board of Slovakia invited me to take a trip there, which I have to take them up on their offer, but I haven't gone yet, because now I'm actually scared.
After viewing the first part.
After viewing the first part. The film was a big hit in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia, and they got it the way people from Kazakhstan eventually got Borat. They realized that it's not a movie about Slovakia, it's a movie about Americans. And it's a movie that's not critical of Slovakia, it's about American stereotypes of Eastern Europe. And I picked Slovakia specifically because Americans don't even know it exists. In the way that Borat picked Kazakhstan, because nobody knows it exists. Most Americans don't. So, and I said, I made it very clear that it's movie Slovakia, that this is not an act. Everything that's about Europeans in the film is an American stereotype, what Americans want to believe. And everything about Americans in the film is 100% accurate. That is exactly how Americans are and how they behave. A certain type of American, not all. But, the reaction was actually, the film was a big hit over there. They loved it. And it was great to watch it with Europeans, because they saw that point of view. They're like, yeah, we know those guys. We've seen Americans doing that. And they have an objective. They're like, yeah, this is when he says mission accomplished. They get the Americans. Le Mans put it as the best American film of the year. They saw it as a criticism of capitalism gone too far, and a comment on American imperialism and all the references to that. They thought it was, they loved it. So it was really, whereas Americans, a lot of people just saw it as a horror film, which is fine too. I like movies that work on both levels. They're actually, and then we cast as kind of the leader of the organization, this guy Milan Konashko, in Hostel II, and he was the Minister of Culture in Slovakia for 15 years. He's like their Robert Redford or Paul Newman. He was a big star over there, and he then went into politics, and for 15 years was Minister of Culture, and just retired a year ago. And then Hostel II is his first American movie. He's done like 200 movies. This is his first American film. And I said, you do realize that, you know, this is Hostel II? And he's like, it's just, he goes, I get it. He goes, it's just a story, it's not real.
Okay. Coming back to the cast, you show the cast were very low concerning the first part. I think it's also responsible that you made the movie in Slovakia, mostly Europe, not in America. If you would do it in a Hollywood studio with all the studio value, that would be cost something more. Was it a point to make it there, or was it only come to location?
Well, I wrote the story because I wanted to shoot a movie in Prague. I'd heard it was great, and I felt like the subject matter worked and the story worked, and I felt that it was 3.8 million. I felt that the original budget was 3, and it went up a little. I felt that that was an appropriate number for what I wanted to do. And I said, you know what? If I shoot this, if I shot it for $4 million in America, I'd never get this production value. If I shoot this in Prague and around Prague, it'll look like a $20 million movie because it will have all the cars there, all the cast there. And I really shot most of the locations. You know, there was one set. It was that one room. I think the brothel hallway was a set. Then there was in Hostel I, there was one room, and we just switched it over for both sorts of rooms.
The cellar? Was the cellar the studio made, or was it a real cellar?
Real. That was all real. The only thing was the actual room where they're in. That was the only set. Everything else was real. And we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford to build it. So we had to like climb down these stairs. And that was when we were in the basement of that closed down mental asylum. And there were these old factories that are just rotting there. And they're amazing. They're buildings like this. You're like, this beautiful architecture from another era that is now just rotting and the rot and decay. And that's what the movie, I felt it symbolically represented the movie and the rot and the worst parts of people. I loved it. And so, you know, there was definitely a cost, but it's cheaper to shoot there. But, you know, I wrote the story. I felt it. And really with Hostel II, I mean, you know, I think Resident Evil 2, they went and shot it for $50 million. I thought, you know what, nobody wants to see a big budget Hostel 2. People don't need to see visual effects. And I thought, Jesus, if I make the Hostel 2 for a huge budget, then they're going to want me to put stars in, and they're going to say, oh, it can't be that violent. I was like, that's not what I want. It's got to feel like a hostel. It has to be a hostel. There's part 1 and part 2, and they go together, and it's the same universe. So the budget went up, but not by much. And all that extra money that we got, which wasn't a lot of extra money, we put it into things like lights, like shooting at night. Like if you notice in Cabin Fever and Hostel, I think I could only afford to shoot one night in both films, and that was like outside the club or something. It was like very few nights. All the stuff happens inside because we couldn't afford to shoot at night because it's too expensive and it's slow. And now I could finally write night sequences, so it feels more like a horror film that you're outside at night and scenes in the woods and things like that. So. That was great. And also, you know, more camera work and having a second unit camera that could get things. Like I just got to, you know, build some more sets so I could really photograph things the way I wanted to. Any extra money went to blood, guts, and lighting packages.